The Introvert Dating Success Podcast, the show for introverted men that's all about learning how to attract beautiful women and still get your precious alone time. And now, here's your host, dating coach and fellow introvert, Harry Wilmington.
What up, guys? Welcome to the Introvert Dating Success Show. I'm your host, as always, Harry Wilmington. I'm coming to you live on a very momentous day because if you have been following the news and watching the trial between Johnny Depp and Amber that was happening in Virginia, where Johnny put out a defamation suit against Amber Heard for falsities that she claimed that he did to her in their relationship that resulted in him losing a lot of jobs, her putting out an article that caused him to not be allowed to get work and stuff in Hollywood. You know that today he was victorious in his quest. And so she tried to bring a defamation suit against him, but ultimately the jury was able to see and decide that Amber Heard was lying about all the claims she put forth in this article and awarded Johnny Depp damages. And that's great, especially for men, because, you know, for years, there's been this whole mantra of always believe women. And I believe that every claim that a woman brings forth against a man should be researched. So I'd rather it be inspect all women's claims versus believe all women, because there's this narrative that a woman wouldn't dare lie about something as horrendous as getting beaten or, you know, beat up by her significant other or spouse. And as men, we know that is factually inaccurate. I know I've been in relationships where a woman's tried to lie on me for a variety of things. I had one woman one time try to claim that I had gotten her pregnant, and this was after I had gotten a vasectomy. But, you know, if somebody were to hear that claim, their first thought would be to believe the woman, because why would a woman lie about something as serious as a pregnancy? Why would a woman in this case lie about something as heinous as a guy repeatedly punching her and beating her up? That wouldn't possibly happen. But this case should go to show you that there are women, just like there are men, but there are women out there who are going to try to do things to you, especially if they feel like there's some kind of slight against them, or if they feel embarrassed by you in some way. Or in this case, I don't know if Johnny, for example, brought about the idea of them getting divorced first or not, but maybe that could be a way of her getting back. But the point is, you don't know. And so I'm glad the case went in the direction that it did. But that was 4 to 6 years of Johnny's life where the public believed that he did these heinous things that if you were to watch the court case, you were able to see with your own eyes all the fallacies that Amber had put out there and all the evidence that she tampered with to be able to try to win this case, you know? And it's very, very sad. But also, and this is where, as men, we have to learn to take responsibility for the kind of women we're deciding to date and bring into our circle, okay? There were plenty of red flags in the course of their relationship, before they got married, mind you, that should have let Johnny know this woman has something slightly wrong with her, and she's not going to be a good partner for me to get with long term. Now, I want to preface this by saying, yes, I do believe there are things that Johnny did in the relationship that would also warrant him not being the best partner to get with. And I will touch upon some of those as I'm going through what I'm going through today. But in terms of Johnny's side of things, when he got on the stand and he started talking about how their relationship first started and how everything was all blissful and it was like a really big honeymoon, and then like a year and a half into the relationship, things started happening. That's when I started paying attention. And I started really looking at what are the things that he started to notice about Miss Heard that in my eyes would be instant red flags that would cause me to really second guess if I wanted to be with this person and cut them off. And the thing is this, guys, when you're in a relationship with a woman, those first few months or that first year, year and a half can be so blissful that you inadvertently start missing out on red flags because you're thinking things are so great that anything that pops up, it's not a red flag. It's just something that we can talk through. And ideally, that should be the case. But there are also certain actions and certain things that a woman will do that should really make you think about, should I stay in this long term? And so I'm going to go over 10 red flags that Johnny, poor Johnny, missed out on either early on in their dating relationship or just prior to them getting married, just things that were popping up and happening that should have made him think, you know what, this one's not the right one for me. All right. And I'm doing this because I want you guys to look at your own either relationships or look at women that you're currently dating and look at if they've put out any of these signs and really start to look at them and say, is this a one-time fluke? Is this her personality? And is this something I want to deal with long-term? All right. So let's go ahead and get into what some of those flags are. So the first major flag that Johnny missed out on was her doing controlling things and controlling actions. And it's funny because Amber tried to bring up, oh, he's trying to control me. Yeah. But really, she was the one doing stuff. And so perfect example was in his early testimony, he talked about how the first year and a half was pure bliss. And he said that there was this thing that she used to always do whereby he would come home and she would rush to the door and greet him. And then she would take off his shoes and then he'd go out doing whatever. Okay. So he said there was one day where he came home and she was busy on the phone or she was doing something else. And so he just took his shoes off and then walked in. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that's not normal. Most people take their own shoes off, right? And so he said when she saw him and saw that she took his shoes off, she was like, what are you doing? Like, he was like, I took my shoes off because you were busy. And she said, well, no, I'm supposed to be the one to do that. I'm supposed to be the one to take off your shoes. And how dare you? And like really berated this dude for taking off his shoes. All right. And he said this happened again, a year and a half into their relationship. But at that point, so much good had happened that he didn't really think anything of it. But that right there was a perfect example of her starting to show her controlling tendencies. And as he testified, there was more and more stuff that indicated that she was really being a controlling person. There would be times where they get into an argument, for example, and he'd want to just walk away just to have time to think, or because she was really upset. And rather than give him that time, she'd be like, no, we got to talk about it now. And she would follow him around and try to like make him talk and try to get on him for that. And so these are things that people that are trying to manipulate you will do. They'll try to do things that make you feel bad for not allowing them to do it. But really, it's them trying to be controlling of you because they want to have, they want to be able to navigate how you're running your life and the things you're able to do. Okay. And you got to start looking for this early on, guys, because it might just sneak up on you where you start to realize, wait, when I try to do certain things, she gets mad or upset, or she tries to say, if I want to eat a piece of broccoli, she's like, no, you got to eat these green beans instead. Look out for those controlling behaviors because Johnny missed out. And as you can see, he paid for it in the long run. The second red flag that Johnny missed out on is her saying that he was always wrong about everything and she was never wrong. And he mentioned it. He said that there were times where like he could tell he was definitely if he was in the wrong about something, he'd have no problem admitting it and apologizing for it, but that she could never do that. Okay. And I have run across women who are very unable to apologize for anything because their viewpoint is, well, if I did something wrong, I'd apologize, but my viewpoint or the action I did, I have a justification for, therefore I'm not wrong. And when you meet women like this, run, because these are women that aren't able to objectively look at themselves and say, you know what, I could see here and here how I was wrong, or I came to this conclusion based on information that wasn't completely there. That's my bad. If you don't have a woman that is ever at any time able to apologize or admit that she was at fault, you need to get out, because what's going to inevitably happen is as you guys have more fights, which you're bound to do just be in a relationship and you're bound to get into more conversations, you're going to be the guy that's blamed for everything to the point where, God forbid you guys break up, she's going to be blaming you. Oh, because he used to abuse me, he used to hit me, blah, blah, just like Amber did. Okay. So be mindful of that. The third red flag that Johnny missed out on was name calling. Now, to be fair, listening to the various audio that was put forth in court, there were definitely times where Johnny was also calling her out of her name. And I don't think as a man, you should ever do that. Even if you're as mad as you can be at a woman, you need to be able to keep it based on the argument and not go to petty name calling and things that are going to throw off the argument. Okay. But that said, there were several times where Amber was trying to front like, well, I don't ever treat him bad and I don't treat him mean, this is that. But then come to hear the audio, she's calling him names, calling him out of his name and cursing out all this other stuff. Okay. If you're dating a woman that gets so riled up during arguments that she has to resort to calling you names or being overly sarcastic, get out, because that's not a woman that is trying to come to an understanding. That's a woman that's trying to win a fight. And you, in a relationship, the goal should not be to win a fight. The goal should be to come to some kind of understanding and be able to come to some kind of compromise about whatever's going on. But a woman that's going to just be name calling you and saying you're not worth this and you're bump, whatever, she's not trying to be in this for the betterment of the relationship. She's trying to prove that she's right and trying to, win this thing by putting you down so low that you just acquiesce to whatever she's trying to get you to do. And that's not a fair thing for you to be in. Okay. So you got to be bold. The first time this happens, if you notice a woman doing this, you got to be able to say, hey, we can talk about whatever you want, but you call me names. This isn't going to happen. So if you're going to go that route, I'm going to be over here. Let me know when you are ready to actually talk about this without resorting to name calling. But make sure also, guy, that you are not resorting to that. And I know it can be very, very hard. I came from a family that didn't do that. So when I'm in disagreements with women that I'm dating, I don't ever resort to name calling. But I know a lot of people come from families where sarcastic jabs are constantly thrown. And so it can be a subconscious habit that people pick up, and then they happen to throw it out there when they're trying to argue with somebody and don't realize that that's actually causing the other person to shut down. All right. But make sure that the woman you're with is mindful of that too, that you don't take name calling at all very well. The fourth red flag that Johnny missed was circular arguments. These are arguments where like you argue about something and then you guys keep bringing up points and then it just keeps going around and around in a circle. Now, again, if you're a man that is trying to legitimately come to a point of peace with the woman and to resolve the argument, then you will have no problem being like, hey, you know what? I can see this part of the argument where you're right, and I can see how these things can be fixed, yada, yada, yada. Now, if you're doing that, and then the woman, A, isn't able to admit the parts that she's faulting on, or also she seems to want to continue the argument, like, because these are like the women that you'll say, you know what, babe, my bad, I'm sorry, I apologize, I want to do what I can to make it right, whatever. And then rather than taking that apology and seeing that you live up to what you're agreeing to apologize in the way you're trying to apologize, they want to continue on with other things. Well, you might apologize for that, but you also did this thing and this thing over here, blah, blah, blah. And then they keep rehashing this argument, or you quote unquote resolve one argument, but then the next time you get into another disagreement, she wants to circle back to this previous thing that you did that actually has nothing to do with what the current argument is. Okay. These are women that are holding grudges, and they will prolong arguments and they will prolong any kind of grievances they have against you. These are not women you want to stay with long-term, because what's going to happen is as you're with somebody for 5 or 10 years, everything that you've ever done ever is going to constantly get compounded. So instead of being forgiven and forgotten, it's going to be forgiven in the moment, but brought up later. And then come 5 years in, I have like 5 years worth of stuff that anytime she's going to try to bring up against you in an argument, get out. It's not fun. Trust me, it is not fun to be in that with that kind of person. The fifth red flag that Johnny missed was he said he would constantly be interrupted during arguments because it felt as though her speaking was more important than his. Now, I have definitely been with women whereby we get into a disagreement. And again, I'm always for like, I want to hear your side of the story, and I want to be able to get my side out. And I will let a woman sit there and talk for 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes to get their stuff out. If you're with that kind of woman where you're letting her talk, and then when it's time for you to talk and either express your side or try to at least explain where you're coming from, and you get like 10 seconds into what you're trying to say, and she just jumps in and interrupts, what she's saying subconsciously to you is that A, what she has to say is more important than what you have to say, and B, she's already preemptively making judgments about what you're saying because it feels like an attack on her. Even if you're not saying anything directly about her, you could be like, she could say, this is why I feel bad when you don't put up the laundry because X, Y, and Z reason, 5 minutes of talking, this is why. And you could say, babe, my bad. I understand where you're coming from. This is what's happening on my end. So sometimes when I'm starting to do the laundry, I get distracted by, and before you can finish your sentence, well, no, that's not a thing because I get distracted too. And it's not fair that I can get distracted and still do the laundry, blah, blah, blah. Again, that's a woman that her viewpoint and values she's putting as more important than yours because she doesn't want to hear you. She doesn't want to hear what you have to say because she's already on the defensive. And so if you're able to actually get out and explain yourself, it means that she can no longer be defending herself. And so if a woman that's, especially a woman that's come from like a past where, it's resulted in her being anxious or having a certain viewpoint in men, she's already coming from this lens of you're the bad guy. So anything you say is just trying to justify your position as the bad guy, but I'm the good guy in this scenario and I don't want to listen. And so that's what Johnny was saying, was that he would try to get in these cordial conversations and she would be the one, again, name calling, interrupting him, saying it's not a thing. There's several audios you could hear where he was trying to talk and she'd just be interrupting him and not letting him talk. Well, that doesn't get anything resolved. And so if you're in a relationship and these fights coming up, again, your goal should be to try to listen to her, what she has to say, but ultimately resolve the argument. If she's not allowing that to happen, it means that she is constantly in fight mode. Dude, you can't save that. Get the freak out. Unless she's going to therapy and getting work done, like talking to a therapist and actually getting work done to be able to handle criticisms, then no amount of you being patient, of you being talked over is ever going to save her from herself. Get out. The sixth red flag that Johnny missed is her hitting him. Now, she said, oh, Johnny would hit me, but no evidence that was brought to court indicated that he at any time actually hit her. But there's definitely evidence of her saying on tape, well, I didn't punch you, but I hit you, Johnny, as if she could tell the difference in terms of how he's feeling or taking the hit in. But the point is, she admitted on tape that she hit him. Guys, here's the thing. Women know that men are bigger and stronger on average. But there's also part of them that knows that we are very aware, especially in today's climate, that if we get caught, let alone if there's any hearsay about us hitting, beating, spitting, kicking a woman in any form or fashion, that the law is going to come after us. Other men are going to try to come after us and beat us up. Like, they know this. And so, especially if a woman's with a guy where she can tell that he knows that hitting her is wrong and bad, some women will take advantage of that and try to hit you. And again, they know if they're weaker and they're stronger, but they also know if you're not going to do anything, then no matter how hard they come at you, you're not going to do anything back, which now gives them the leverage to treat you any way that they want to. And this is why, and this is interesting because a lot of guys, like Johnny said, like Amber said on the tape, like she said on the tape, if Johnny were to come forward and try to say that he was being abused by her, who in the world's going to actually believe him? And this is a thought process that toxic women actually have, that no matter what you say or do, the world's going to believe me over you. So you better straighten up and act right and do what I want you to do. And Amber was exactly that kind of person. So at the first instance where she threw something at him, where she hit him or whatever, he should have ran. And that goes into point number 7 that he also missed, was throwing stuff. Hitting's bad enough, but getting stuff thrown at you, like Johnny had a wine bottle thrown at him that resulted in his whole tip of his finger getting cut off. And those pictures, by the way, in the trial, I don't know if you saw them, but if you find that video footage, let me tell you, that is some of the most gruesome footage I've ever seen of a person's legit finger torn off, and all you see is just a red top where it's like jagged cut and whatnot. I don't know how the doctor sewed that back on to where it could work. That is a miracle that the doctors did that, okay? But the point is, that probably wasn't the first time that she threw something at him. So at the first instance where that happened, I'd have been like, wait, you have the audacity to throw stuff? I'm gone. Because there's no amount of wrong you can do to a woman that should justify her then wanting to throw something at you. Because God forbid she had thrown the wine bottle at his head and cracked his skull open, or he had fallen over on something that would have caused his, cracked his skull open again, or had more blood come out, or even with his finger, if he wasn't able to wrap it the right way, he could have bled to death. Like, there's no telling. But the point is, she should be throwing words at you, but not throwing actual objects at you that could cause extreme harm. Okay. So if a woman does that at any time, even if she's joking, dude, I'm telling you, that is a small telltale sign early on of a woman that is willing to throw bigger things later and cause more potential harm to you later as a result. The 8th red flag that Johnny missed out on was her using personal info against him in arguments. And this is specifically goes to when, she knew that his kids were his world. So there'd be times during arguments where she would say, like, this is why you're a bad father and your kids don't really love you and blah, blah, blah. Why is she doing that? Why is she trying to use his family against him? Why is she trying to bring in his kids to say you're not a good enough father and they don't love you? She's doing that to try to hit him emotionally because she can't win in a logical argument. And women that, that don't have the ability to actually sit down and talk their point out and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling, this is how I'm hurt and why, they will do this kind of thing. Use personal things against you in a means to try to take you down a peg or two so she can feel superior. And it's not a fair way to fight, okay? So if that's happening, recognize that if she's doing that with personal stuff, it means you can't now trust her with any kind of information because anything you tell her can and will be used against you in any kind of fight, let alone in a court of law. And also, again, she's not about the actual issues that are coming up. She's about trying to win at all costs. Get rid of these kind of women. The 9th red flag that Johnny missed out on was he said they started having day-to-day arguments. Now, I can't speculate what all those arguments are about. All I know is at the point where you're having daily arguments and they're not able to be resolved, and then it seems like every day she's bringing up a new thing to complain about or argue about, whether she's in the wrong or not, this indicates you two are not a good match, because it's not that couples can't fight or argue, but ideally you're with somebody who you genuinely enjoy spending time with, and that you're on the same page about a lot of stuff, and that on the off chance that things come up, your goal is to resolve it because you want to get back to having the good times with that person. But if you find that you're getting up in the morning and the first thing that's happening is this person's coming to you and trying to start a fight, or they're starting to nitpick at things that you're doing, like, oh, you left the fork on the table again, like, this is not going to be a fun relationship long-term, guy. And if you're having day-to-day arguments and, you're going to counseling and you're trying to fix these things and it still seems to be happening, maybe it just means this person's not for you. But it could also mean that this person is down to fight all the time. Maybe they were in a family where they grew up where they argued so much that that's how they showed love. And I feel sorry if you're with that kind of woman, but that's her job to fix that, not yours. All right. And then the 10th red flag that Johnny missed out on is making a public scene. At the point where Amber was willing to do screaming or crying or, put articles out that were embarrassing him to the point that the public at large was now going to attack him, definitely a big sign that indicates that you shouldn't be with this person. Because in a relationship, whatever problems you guys are having, and I'm prefacing this by saying, obviously, guy, if you were legitimately abusing your significant other in some kind of way, then she has every right to go public with that, because it's not fair that you're doing that to her. But assuming you're not doing that and going to that extreme, then your conflicts with each other should be between you and her and possibly a therapist, okay? But if she's bringing out issues to other people or embarrassing you by putting out things, to your friends to see and whatnot, then this woman, again, is really about trying to prove that she's in the right and is trying to play a victim that's not actually a victim, just because she knows it'll help her win any kind of argument you two have. And at that point, you need to get the freak out, because this is the woman that if it's happening early on in the relationship, again, in the long run, her ability to make a public scene or to call you out in public or to scream or cry or whatever, or to even scream falsehoods like, oh, he's hitting me, he's abusing me, when it's not really happening, that stuff's only going to be probability-wise only going to have a higher chance of happening later on, okay? So, and these are things that all happened to Johnny, again, before he married Amber. Had he been more mindful of these things and not been so in love, he would have been able to see these things earlier and possibly be able to get out while the getting was good. And this is also, by the way, guys, why, hooking up with a woman early on, those ties are real. Like, hooking up with a woman makes it infinitely harder to get away from her, whether the hookup was good or not. Just the fact that you've entered into that person, it can be very hard to pull away from that person once they start doing these kind of things. So this is why, you want to kind of wait a little bit until you hook up. I recommend like 2 to 3 months before you start trying to hook up with the person. But also, even after you hook up with the person, be mindful that, be mindful that just because you guys hooked up doesn't mean she's suddenly going to act right. And that just because you guys hooked up doesn't mean that she can't do something later down the road that would be a red flag that would wave to you that it's time to end this thing, okay? So don't let a good hookup ruin your ability to see when a person is suddenly actually being a bit of an a-hole and that you need to get out while the getting's good, all right? So hopefully you guys are able to learn this. Again, go back and watch some of the trial footage, but especially watch Johnny's testimonies. You'll get to really see and hear how Amber started acting that will make you recognize, oh crap, like how did he miss these things? But dude, when you're in it, it can be very, very hard to objectively see that a woman is treating you bad, okay? And again, some of these things you're going to see from women, it's not that if all women do these things that they're just horrible people and you should get away. Because, for example, a woman early on might name call you, but are you able to sit her down and explain that's not how you're going to argue, and she's able to change up? In the beginning, she might playfully hit you one time, and when that happens, are you able to say, hey, look, I know you're playing, but don't do that. Like, I don't like getting hit in any capacity, in my face, my arm, whatever, and that's not cool. Is she able to learn from that? If you're telling her these things or trying to stop this behavior and her response is something akin to like, well, that's not a thing, or you shouldn't be bugged by that, or just get over yourself, get out. Because again, she's not in this for you in the relationship. She's in this because she wants to be in the right. She wants to feel good that she has a boyfriend, but she wants to control that boyfriend. And that's not a relationship you need to be in long-term. All right. So that's it. That's all I got for today's show, guys. Be sure to leave comments down below about what you thought about the trial. If you're listening to this on the podcast, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can catch these kind of things live, because I record this one live. It's awesome. So there are times I do live shows, and if you want to be able to comment on those shows when I'm doing them, you can definitely join in on the chat, and it'll be a cool conversation. All right. Be sure to go to the website for more ebooks, audiobooks, programs, and other things that are designed to help you date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. If you want to support the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or go to my Cash App at Harry Wilmington, or you can also go to my webpage at introvertdatingsuccess.com, click on the tip jar tab, and leave a monetary thank you. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am Harry Wilmington, and I will catch you guys on the next show. I'm out. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Introvert Dating Success Podcast. Visit us at introvertdatingsuccess.com for more great tips on attracting women using your natural introvert charm. Oh, yeah.